Zoom. Just a little bit on the Harris Center. We're a small conservation organization. We're located in Hancock, New Hampshire. For those of you not from this region, that's in the Monadnock region in the southwest corner of the state of New Hampshire. Since 1970, the Harris Center has been helping people fall in love with the natural world. And we do this through classroom collaborations in local schools that reach well over 3,000 school kids each year. We offer over 120 events and outings every year, most without any charge. We're a local land trust that is responsible for managing and monitoring over 24,000 acres. And we offer a variety of community science and other research opportunities throughout our region. If you're interested in the Harris Center, please check out our upcoming events at harriscenter.org. And I do want to highlight one event that's upcoming because it's another Firefly event. And this is on June 8th from 5:30 to 6:30. We're hosting Living Light, Fireflies, Light Pollution, and What You Can Do to Help, talk by entomologist Evelyn Owens. So please sign up for that, and you can do that at that harriscenter.org website. We are so excited to have Don Salvatore and Doug Lowry with us tonight to talk about fireflies and introduce us to Mass Audubon's nationwide Firefly Watch community science project. Firefly Watch combines an annual summer of evening ritual that we've all experienced walking into the backyards to watch fireflies with scientific research. And you can join a network of community scientists around the country by observing your own backyard and help scientists map firefly activities and behavior. Just a quick note on Don and Doug. I think Doug is actually going to be starting off tonight. Doug Lowry is an adult.
Actually, sorry, Jeremy, Don starts.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Don Salvatore is starting off tonight. Doug grew up in Weymouth, Mass. He has a BA in biology from Northeastern University. He spent his career as a science educator at the Children's Museum in Dartmouth, Mass, the Roanoke Valley Science Museum in Virginia, and for the last 36 years at the Museum of Science in Boston. He has taught museum programs in all of the sciences and is one of the original founders of Firefly Watch citizen science project. He retired in 2016 and moved to Scarborough, Maine with his wife. Doug Lowry, who will come on second, is an adult educator for Mass Audubon Southeast Hub, senior field instructor for National Outdoor Leadership School, and a master educator for the Leave No Trace program. He has spent over 3,000 days on wilderness expeditions and is a grateful student of wilderness immersion. Boy, that sounds great. Fantastic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Don and Doug. And if you have any questions, please send them through chat, and we'll have time for questions after the talk. And let's take it away.
Great. Well, thanks, Jeremy, for inviting me here to speak to everyone tonight. Happy to have so many people coming here to learn about fireflies. Let me pull up my screen and we can get started. So just a quick note, the agenda for tonight. I'll be talking about secret lives of fireflies, and then we'll move on to Doug talking about when and where to see fireflies, how to attract them, and a little bit about the Mass Audubon's Firefly Watch citizen science project. So I was working at the Museum of Science when we started Firefly Watch, and I started doing a lot of programs about fireflies for people because I found out that people didn't know much about fireflies, which found kind of unusual since fireflies really are one of the most popular insects. It's the only insect I know that people build a summer ritual around. Gather the kids together, warm summer night, get some lawn chairs, go out and sit in the backyard and watch fireflies. And so doing the program, I realized that people know very little. They really know only 4 things about fireflies. They know that they come out at night. They know that they fly. They know that they flash. And then they know that they like them. And that was about the extent of people's knowledge. When they found out there was more than one type of firefly, even that amazed them. Most people thought that firefly was a firefly. In fact, there are about 2,000 types of fireflies around the world. In the United States, there's probably about 120 different species. And in New England, maybe 24 species. So we have quite a few different types of fireflies. But I put the program together to tell people a little bit about these wonderful, very interesting insects. And I call the program The Secret Lives of Fireflies. What's really happening in a firefly meadow when you're sitting there watching them, having a wonderful time, thinking how wonderful and peaceful it is. Now, the real title of this program should be Sex Lives in Fireflies, because that's what's happening in the firefly meadow. So let's take a look and see what's going on. First of all, what is a firefly? Well, of course, it's an insect, we know that. And in the insects, it is in the group of beetles. We call it a fly, firefly, it's not a fly. We call it a lightning bug, it's not a bug, it's a beetle. And then within the beetle group, you have the lampreyarids or the fireflies. So what makes it a firefly? If you look at the picture on the left, you see that the firefly has this yellow or whitish yellow shield over its thorax. The thorax is the chest area, and that covers the head. So in fireflies, the thorax is covered by this shield called a pronotum, and it extends over the head. So if you were to look at a firefly sitting, resting, if you look at it from the top, you wouldn't see its head. So that's one characteristic of a firefly. And of course, the most well-known characteristic of fireflies is they produce light, they glow. You see in the picture on the left, the insect on the bottom that is glowing is a larval or young firefly. All firefly larvae that we know about around the world can produce light. And so that comes from the tail end of the firefly. Now above that firefly is the pupa. So beetles have a 4-stage life cycle. They go from the egg to the larva, which does all of the eating in fireflies. They grow during this period, and then they change into the pupa, and that's the resting stage where their body is changing from the larva to the adult. And so you see the pupa also glows. Now, I don't show you an adult firefly glowing because not all firefly adults can glow. Some of them have lost the ability to produce light, and yet they're still fireflies because their larvae glow. So we'll talk more about these non-glowing fireflies in a little bit. Now, within fireflies, there are different groups or genera. If you are scientifically inclined, you know a genus, plural, genera, is a group of organisms that are very similar, but not exactly the same species, not exactly the same organism. And so I want to talk about the 3 groups or the 3 genera of fireflies that we have in New England that you'll see flying around flashing. So the first one is Photinus. Now, Photinus is a pretty small insect. From one end to the other, they're anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch long. It's not very big. And when you consider on a dark night when they're flashing, how bright that flash can be, it's really surprising how small they are. You also notice on the pronotum of the thorax, you see that pinkish color. So they have a pink and a black center. And then around the outer wings, which are called the elytra, the black wings, you see that whitish outline. Okay, so that's a Photinus. And when a Photinus flashes, it flashes that yellowish green color. The next group is Pyractomina. Pyractomina is about the same size, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch long. And if you look at the pronotum, you notice that it's edged in black. So you can see the center black line and the pink, and the 2 edges have this black outline. There's also a ridge going down the center of the black line, but you'd have to look pretty close to see that. When a Pyractomina glows, they give off this amber color. Somebody said it looked like an ember of a campfire floating by. Then the 3rd group is the Photurus. Now, the Photurus in the picture is about twice the size of the others, and in real life, that's true as well. They're anywhere from 3/4 inch to 1 inch long. They tend to have very long legs, so when you see them, not only do they look larger, they look very leggy. And when they glow this darker green color. Now, they have scientific names because nobody's giving them common names, and the scientific names can be confusing sometimes. I'm going to be talking about the Photinus and the Photurus. And to prevent confusion, this is the way to think of them. The Photinus is the tiny one. The Photurus is the not so tiny one. Okay. This is a good firefly habitat. This was my front yard when I lived in Massachusetts. We let the bushes grow and we let the grass grow. And they like it there because they can spend the day on the ground underneath the blades of grass or underneath the bushes, hidden away. But as night approaches and it starts to get dark, the males crawl up onto the bushes and the males start to flash from the bush. Pretty soon they'll take off and they'll fly. And so let's bring it to a nighttime scene here where the firefly is flying around flashing. These are the males. The females are sitting perched somewhere on the grass or on the ground, and they're looking, they're watching the males fly by. And the males are trying to attract the female. If the female sees a male she likes, then she'll respond to it, as you'll see here. So here's a male flashing, and there's the, okay. Just go through this guy again, and we'll see him, we'll see the female respond. Now, in the beginning of the summer, there could be 50 times more males than females. So she can watch a lot of these males fly by and not respond at all. And if she doesn't respond, they can't find her because it's dark. So it's only when one responds, like this one, that the male will know where she is. And he'll fly down to where she is and land pretty close, and they could flash back and forth as he's wandering around trying to find her. When he finds her, of course, then they start to mate. The problem is, any other male in the neighborhood could see that female flash. And even if they're not the one that she chose, as long as they know where she is, they can try to get down there before the chosen male, and then they would get to mate with her. So the females can be pretty choosy at this point. They can choose the male they like, and hopefully that is the male that will make it to the female. The adult fireflies don't live very long, maybe about 3 weeks during the summer. And some of them are only out for a very short period of time at night, maybe 3/4 of an hour. Some of them are out much longer, but some very short period of time. They don't eat as adults. Their main purpose is to mate. So this male, when he sees a female respond, he wants to get down there quick and get to mate. That's his purpose in life as an adult. There may be a lot of different firefly species in the meadow at the same time, and she's only going to respond to one that's the same species. So how can she tell from a flash of light that he is the right species? Well, one thing is the timing. If you notice this firefly, it's a much quicker interval between the flash, and you notice the color is different. This would be the pyractomina. It's also flying high in the trees. Some will fly high in the trees, some will fly low on the ground, some you'll find only in the woods, some in wet meadows. And so the time of year, the place, the location, the timing of the flash all tells the female what species it is. So here we have another one that is more of a streak of light. And when you're out watching fireflies, you can start to notice the different flashes. And we're going to have this one does a double flash, and then a period in between it, and it will repeat that double flash and a period in between. And then we'll have one more here with a flicker. Okay, so this is the language of the fireflies. Each firefly has its own timed flash, and the females know this. And they also have a flash that's particularly timed against the male. So if we look at a flash chart here, if you look on the left-hand side, you see in the top it says photinus, and then on the right-hand side of the left-hand side of that chart, single flash, double flash, variable flash. So we'll take a look at just the single flash. So we zoomed in, and if you look at photinus marginalis, the male will flash. The length of the flash is about 1/3 of a second, and it repeats it about every 3 seconds at 74 degrees Fahrenheit. The female will give about 1/4 of an inch flash, or about 1/2 inch after the beginning of the male's flash at 70 degrees. And the temperatures are given because this is where the temperatures were recorded and noted at these temperatures. And that's important because insects are cold-blooded, and they slow down when it gets cold, and they speed up when it gets fast. So if it's colder out, their flash is going to be a longer duration. They're going to slow down. So maybe at 60 degrees, it might be 4 seconds. Maybe at 80 degrees, it might be 2.5 seconds. But this is what's been recorded, so this is what we go by. So you see in this chart, we have the single flash, the double flash, the variable flash. The variable flash, if you look at Photinus consimilis, the top one, you see it'll give 4 flashes, and then it might give a 5th, a 6th, a 7th, or an 8th. That's what those empty boxes mean. The female will respond about 4.5 seconds later with 1 or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 flashes. This chart, or actually a more complete chart of fireflies around the whole country, you can find this on the website at Mass Audubon. So maybe Doug will mention where to find that when he comes on. And you can have fun going out trying to identify the different flashes, the different fireflies in your neighborhood just by the flash. And the fireflies will also respond to a light that you might produce. I have a fishing rod that I put a little Christmas tree light in the end of it. And at the other end, the handle end, I have a battery pack to run it, 2 AA batteries, and a button, on-off button. It's just a doorbell button. And I can wave that around, flashing like a male. And I can get the females to respond. But I can also play the female role. And I see a male flash by, if I know what the female response is, I can put that on the ground and respond as a female. And I've actually had males come down and check it out. It's not something you want to do an awful lot because this is serious business for the fireflies. This is their mating time. You don't want to disturb them more than necessary. But it is something you can do and have a little bit of fun with. There's a male firefly standing upside down on that pine needle. You see the head with the eye, then the thorax has the legs attached to it, and then the abdomen. And the abdomen is made up of different segments. And the last 2 full segments of this firefly, which is a Photinus species, is white, and that's his light organ. The female has the second to last only. Only that one segment is white, and that's her lantern. So that's what lights up for her. In the Pyractomina, the male is pretty similar. He has 2 full segments of lantern, but the female is a little different than the female Photinus because she has 2 spots on the last 2 segments connected by that little bit at the bottom. And then the Photurus, again, the male has 2 full segments. The female has 2 full segments that are white, but only part of it lights up. The center part that's the brighter white is what will light up on the female. And so that's how you would tell the males from the females of the fireflies. Of course, if you see a firefly flying around flashing, that's the male. It's because the female would be sitting watching. If they get together, they mate, and this is the first position that they'll take, and then they will move to this position. And they could stay like this for hours and hours. Sometimes you come by the next morning and they're still in this position. And the reason for this is not because it takes that long to transfer the sperm from the male to the female, but the male is giving the female a gift. In many insects, the male will give a gift to the female called a nuptial gift. And it's some type of food. So in some insects, the male will catch an insect and feed it to the female. She'll eat it while they're mating. Other insects, the male will catch an insect and he'll eat it and regurgitate it and give that to the female while they're mating. But in fireflies, the male, the gift is given in the mating process. He has a massive protein that he's delivering to her through the mating process, and that's what takes the time. So when a female is sitting in the bushes watching the male, she's looking for the male with the biggest gift. And that gift, that protein, is going to help her develop more eggs and healthier eggs, because remember, she doesn't eat as an adult, so any extra protein she can get is very helpful. And she wants the male with the biggest amount of protein to give to her. Something in his flash, whether it's a little bit longer flash, whether its timing is a little bit longer than the other males of that species, something like that will tell her that this guy is probably a little bigger and has a little more protein to offer. Now, later on in the season, when there aren't nearly as many males around, then she will take any male that she can get. Also, their gift is not nearly as large because they've mated a couple of times. If everything goes well, the male and the female mate, and she'll lay eggs. But the problem is with this one. This is the Photurus. This is the not tiny. This is the big one. So when the Photurus is finished mating, she will fly down to where the Photinus are flashing to each other. She will land somewhere, and when she sees a male Photinus, the tiny one, fly by, she will imitate the female photinus. Now the male sees this, he thinks it's a female photinus, and he says, I better get down there quick before the other males do. So he flies down to find her, and he approaches her, and she doesn't want to mate with him. Instead, she grabs him and eats him. And the reason she does this is fireflies have poisonous blood. If you think about it, it makes sense. They're easy to find during the summer night because they're the only thing that's lighting up. They're easy to catch. They're very slow flyers. And you know that many of us have caught fireflies when we were kids. And so if they're easy to find and easy to catch, why don't they all get eaten? And the reason for that is their blood is poisonous. Not only is it poisonous, but when they get agitated, they will bleed on purpose from their joints, from the legs in the carapace, in the thorax. And this poisonous blood is very distasteful to many larger animals like birds and lethal to many smaller animals, smaller predators. So not many birds will eat them. Bats won't eat them. Spiders will reject them. Other insects will reject them. But the poison doesn't affect the photurus. Now, she doesn't make the poison, so she needs to acquire it in another way. And this poison will protect the adults, the eggs, the larvae, and the pupa. It's thought that fireflies originally evolved the ability to produce light, not as a mating signal, but as a warning of danger. And so if a bird or a bat were to eat a firefly after seeing it flash and get sick, they would not eat another one. So the biggest predators of the fireflies are other fireflies, these larger photurus fireflies. Gets a little complicated, so try to follow me here. I'll try to make this as clear as possible. On the left-hand side, we have the male photinus and the female photinus down below. Up above on the right hand, the male photurus, and then below the female photurus. Now we know what's supposed to happen is the male photinus flashes, the female flashes back, he finds her, and they mate. We also know that he can flash, and the female photurus can imitate the female photinus. He'll fly down to find the female photinus and find a female photurus instead, and he gets eaten. Once in a while, when the female photurus is trying to imitate a female photinus, she gives a little extra blink. And when the male photinus sees the female photurus pretending to be a female photinus with an extra blink, he knows it's not a female photinus, it's a female photurus pretending to be a female photinus. So he stays away. And all the other males that see this will stay away. Now, it's been noted that the male photinus sometimes will flash and see a female flash, but he doesn't know if it's a female photinus or a female photurus. So he'll fly down fairly close, land someplace close, but not too close. And he will imitate the female photurus, giving the bad flash of the female photinus. Now what this does is it makes all the other males think that it's a female photurus pretending to be a female photinus, when really it's a male photurus pretending to be a female photinus, pretending to be a female, got this wrong, a male photinus pretending to be a female photurus, pretending to be a female photinus. And he can take his time to investigate, all right? Now the male photurus, he's flying around flashing like a male photurus, he's not having any luck. So what he will do is he will stop flashing like a male photurus, and he'll start flashing like a male photinus. The female photurus sees the male photurus pretending to be a male photinus. She pretends to be a female photinus, and now the male photurus knows where she is. And he can fly down and try to convince her to mate, where it may not be that easy because she has eating on her mind. So this is what's going on in a firefly meadow. You're sitting there thinking, oh, isn't this so wonderful, so peaceful? Well, not for the fireflies, because this is real serious business. And so it's fun to go out in the field and see how many of these behaviors you can actually watch. This is a larval firefly. This is an immature, a larval photurus. Excuse me. So it's the larval stage that does all the eating. When they hatch, they're pretty small, and as they feed, they will grow. They'll shed their skin, grow, shed their skin, and they feed on soft-bodied invertebrates. The photinus will feed on mostly earthworms, and the phototourists will feed largely on snails and slugs. Typically, they spend their time underground, and so you don't really see them very often, especially the photinus feeding on the earthworms. They will live 2 years underground here in New England. Down south, they only need a year to develop, but 2 years as a larva, and then they'll come up above as an adult. When the larva sees something like a snail, it bites it and injects a narcotic, and that relaxes the snail so that it opens up. The larva can inject some digestive fluid and dissolve it and slurp up that dissolved bit of muscle of the slug, snail, or earthworm, or whatever. And it's not unusual to have quite a few, a number of these larvae feeding on one prey. Now, if we go back to the, go back the other way. Sorry about that. So these, especially these phototourist larvae, once in a while they'll come above ground and walk around on the ground. And they want to be protected from predators, so they give the warning sign. They will glow. At the rear end underneath, they have a couple of light organs. They won't flash, but they will glow for a few seconds as they're walking along the ground. So you can not only go out in the summer and enjoy watching firefly adults, in the fall, on a nice warm, muggy night, moist night, you can go out and look for little bits of light moving along the ground. And if you investigate closely, you'll find one of these. So that's something else that's fun to do. Look for the firefly larvae as well as the adults. Okay. I mentioned earlier that not all fireflies produce light. And these are 3 genera of fireflies that we have here in New England that are dark fireflies. They don't have light organs as adults, and they come out during the daytime. And it's not unusual to come across these as you're walking through the woods. You walk by some brush and you knock the brush around, and one of these fireflies will fly up. You might see it, and you look at it and you say, well, that looks like a firefly, but it's the daytime. Is that right? And yes, it is. You notice they don't have the white borders on their elytra. And they've evolved to this daytime lifestyle to get away from the predatory phototourists. Because if they come out during the day, the phototourist is not going to find them. They're not going to get eaten. You notice they have that warning color, the orange warning color or the pink-red warning color, which in nature means don't eat me, I'm poisonous. And they do have the poison. So they are protected that way. The Elychnia I want to talk about a little bit, because that goes to great lengths to avoid the predatory phototourists. Now, you think of most fireflies coming out during the summer, but the Elychnia are underground as larvae during the summer. And in the fall, they will emerge as adults, and they will fly to a tree, a communal tree, where you'll find a whole bunch of them gathering together in the fall. I have a white oak in my backyard with thick bark where they can wedge themselves into the crevices of that bark and spend the winter there. So they hibernate above ground in these trees. And the first warm day at the end of the winter or early spring, when it gets to be about 50 degrees with the sun shining on them, they come out and they start walking around. And they'll tap each other with their antenna on the elytra, on the wings, to look for a certain chemical that identifies them as Elychnia of a certain species and the right sex. And they'll mate. And then they're gone by the next summer. But they also fly around and land on other places. And I saw one this morning. I was walking around in the woods and I saw one of these Elychnia. So they're still around. And you'd be surprised once you start looking in these trees in the spring and the fall, how many trees you'll actually find that have these winter fireflies. So that's another fun thing to look for in the firefly world when it's not during the summer. Or you might come across something like this. Now, this is just an imposter. This is a ground beetle that's impersonating a firefly, getting benefit of the protection, I'm sure, but it doesn't flash and it doesn't glow. It's just not a firefly. So that's a little bit about the secret lives of fireflies. And do we want to take time for questions, or do we want questions at the end?
I think why don't we do a series of questions at the end. KW did ask, is leaf litter important to keep firefly or for firefly incubation?
is leaf litter for the incubation. Typically, the eggs might be laid in something moist like wet moss. It could be in leaf litter, but I haven't heard that. But then they would head underground. So the leaf litter is not that important, I wouldn't think, maybe as insulation above ground, but that's about it. Now, one of the problems with fireflies, there are very few firefly researchers, so there's a lot that's not known still about fireflies.
Wow, incredible. Great. Well, we'll do some questions at the end as well, but why don't we move on to Doug?
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jeremy, for having us here with you tonight. And thanks, Don, for getting us on the right foot. So yeah, fireflies, I think we're all connected, and Don alluded to this, so much of part of our childhood, or for many of us anyway. And even as adults, when we see them, I think it can get very nostalgic. And it just, I think, brings in a sense of wonder that is often absent for a lot of folks. But fireflies are one of those things, as Don was saying, it's one of the most popular insects. And it's one of those things that's just hard to not notice and feel connected to. And so this photograph is a photograph from Will Draxler, who was under 18 and submitted this for a landscape photography contest that Mass Audubon was putting together a couple of years ago. And it's just, to me, it's just stunning in that it combines, two of the things at night that really speak to us on a primeval level, and that's the firefly and the stars. And just I think it's a good way to start talking about where and when to look for fireflies. So off we go. Yes, as Don explained, fireflies are an insect, and the things that make them an insect, in addition to what he referred to, is a bilateral symmetry. So that both left and right hand sides of the insect are exactly the same, and it has an external skeleton. And like all insects, or all animals with an external skeleton, the only way they grow is to have be able to molt. And so they're in between when they've shed their last exoskeleton and when they're creating a new one, they are pretty vulnerable. So just like many of our crustaceans and crabs and things like that go through this process, they will spend a little time hiding until that exoskeleton hardens. So here are the things that make a firefly light up. Fireflies aren't unique in this department. There's a lot of creatures and plants that can create bioluminescence, but these are the chemicals that need to be part of this process. And in they come. And when they all get together, it creates bioluminescence. And many of the animals that have the ability to produce bioluminescence also have the ability to control the triggering of it. I believe it's mostly adding the oxygen component at regular intervals. So where and when to look for fireflies? Well, dusk is a great time to start looking, and different species will be active at different times of the night, but you can certainly see them as dusk approaches. You can even see some of them flash when you can still, ambient light and still get around without being dark. And what they have in common is they like to be connected to moisture. they have a pretty wide range of habitats, but they, at some point in their life cycle, it's important for them to be close to moisture. And so often the edge of marshes or the edges of wet woods are great places to look. The edges of ponds often are one of the best places to see them. And yes, if we're going to go out and catch them, then obviously we want to be pretty gentle. So if we're going to use a net, we should choose one of the really fine mesh nets that are designed for catching butterflies and moths, as opposed to like a sweep net, which you would sweep on the ground. It's a much more aggressive approach to collecting insects, and you would probably damage fireflies. Now, I've watched Don do this. He's quite the master of this. And a way to do it successfully is to hold the net close to the net itself, holding the handle very close to the net with one hand, pulling the tapered end of the net straight up in the air, so you're making inverted pyramid, and drop the net from, not a high height, but drop the net right over the firefly. And that way you're not sweeping it, and you're minimizing the chance of damaging the firefly. Then you can kind of sweep the net up, and it's likely to be at the very bottom of the net. So you invert the net carefully and slowly until the firefly's up at the very top of the inverted net. And then you can gently place it into a vessel, a clear vessel, and make sure that that vessel has some sort of holes for oxygen exchange. And if you want to go the extra yard, then have a piece of cloth or paper towel that's been moistened in that container. And the firefly could use the moisture, but it also appreciates a place to hide. Don't worry, you won't miss the firefly flashing, even if it's under the towel, but it is better for the firefly. And then if avoid using directed light. So flashlights are probably something you don't want to use. And I just learned this last night from Dawn. It was my understanding that a blue gel over the light would help. But he says the jury's still out on that, and that there isn't enough research to indicate one way or the other. But the one thing you do want to avoid is that direct light that a flashlight could often do. And then, yeah, do not use bug repellent on your hands for obvious reasons. And also, if you've been paying attention and you remember, and again, some of it's probably nostalgia. I think back in my childhood and think of spending some summers up in mid-Vermont and just being amazed at the numbers of fireflies that existed. And I've seen, or in my mind, I think it's anecdotal, but I've seen, populations decline over the years, and it just doesn't seem like you see them as often as you do. The research backs that up. But where they are, they're still doing pretty well and getting better if we take the initiative to create a better habitat for them. So here, we'll go back to Don's yard, because I think this is just a fantastic yard. In his neighborhood, the photo on the right is one of his neighbors. We won't name names, but this person obviously has a different approach to landscaping. It doesn't, to me, and I guess I'm judging here, but as a human, it doesn't look that appealing to me, actually. It looks pretty barren. And you can imagine if you were a firefly, it wouldn't have much, you wouldn't have much use for that. And the other thing that's happening in order for that yard to look like that is there's obviously some chemical treatment happening to make it look like a golf course. And those chemicals can be everything from lawn fertilizer to herbicide to insecticide. And though, as Dawn says, the research doesn't show that there's a direct correlation between the insecticides that are applied on lawns and mortality rates for fireflies. But that's more likely because there just hasn't been research done in that department. What we do know is that a lot of these chemicals kill earthworms. And we know that fireflies in their larval stage will eat earthworms. So if you can grow your yard more like the left, good on you. So this is what in my opinion, this is what I would, if I was a firefly, this is how I view both of these yards. On the left, it's slug Shangri-La. And on the right, it's like, not much there. So here's some things you can do to attract fireflies to your yard or your community if you like live in a condo or an apartment and don't have a space that you can modify. You could certainly advocate for community space or communal space to take some actions. So if you add a water component to your yard, again, they appreciate it. A lot of what part of their life cycle depends on that water. You can plant native pine trees. And pine trees in particular are great because they provide cover and they also block light because of the nature of their needles. They're a hard tree for light to penetrate. And so it's a good place for them to display and mate. And white pine is readily available and relatively inexpensive. So that's one thing you can do. And you can plant these around the perimeter of any sort of lawn you have, because that will really help. It's really those edges that are gonna give those firefly places to mate and to display. And then, yeah, somebody in the chat's already mentioned this. So here's some fireflies flashing, and if you turn on your porch light, they can't see each other anymore, or it's very much harder for them to identify other species or potential mates if the light is this bright. So there are the things you can do to reduce those outside lights. And that is convert your security lights into motion detective lights so that they only go on when something large goes by. And so that opens up the time fireflies can use your backyard effectively. If you want to permanently illuminate walkways for risk management issues, go for it. But an inexpensive possibility is to put in solar lights, low wattage lights, just enough to light the way of the path. And the good thing about those is that eventually they dim automatically because the energy from the solar collectors drains. Draw your shades. That makes a huge difference. You get a lot of ambient light coming out of houses and through windows. And then, yeah, bring your neighborhood or your friends, neighbors for a firefly walk, so they have an opportunity to learn and appreciate what fireflies can do and why they're important. And perhaps they're more likely to consider your gentle request about turning the neighborhood lights down. And then this is the hardest one. commercial businesses are, and it's a generalization, but they're a little less likely because they're worried about security issues to comply with gentle requests about turning their lights off. But again, you never know. And again, it would be helpful to invite folks that are part of that business to go on a Firefly walk. Then if you do have a lawn, you'll want to keep the grass a little longer than probably your neighbors. And actually, this is a pretty healthy way to approach lawn care anyway. It's healthier for the grass. It requires less watering if you go down that path, is to leave the grass a little higher. And often it's because for fireflies, they use the longer grass to climb up. The females will climb up and get a good vantage point to display at the top of the grass. And they will use it to nestle in during the day as well. So yeah, again, and if you can consider having the parameter of your yard with some shrubs and kind of a barrier into, well, not so much a barrier, but an invitation for the firefly to go from lawn into a more appropriate place. Yeah, and that's the National Gardening Association recommends that anyway for many reasons. It's great for pollinators. And although fireflies aren't anywhere near as important pollinators as some of the other insects, there are a few adults that feed off of goldenrod and sunflower. The other thing to do is make this perhaps isn't the best example, but a pile of wood that you're willing to kind of leave alone, and eventually the wood rots. It's a great spot for females to lay their eggs in rotten wood, rotten logs. And also brush piles are very effective as well. Then another thing you can do is attend a program or festival. And this is Jackie Schuster, and you probably recognize the Firefly, that's Dawn. We had a big celebration down here a few years ago, pre-COVID. Our first festival, we had about 70 people, but there are places like Pennsylvania that have hundreds of people come to their festivals, and you can learn a lot from them. And plus, it's kind of cool to hang out with people that enjoy fireflies. It's kind of a pretty cool class of people. And then finally, we'll talk some about Mass Audubon Firefly Watch. And yeah, this is a citizen science project that your findings, if you care to join the program, your findings are used immediately by a number of firefly researchers. So it's real-time information that is used right away. And that's what really makes it a citizen science project. That the data that you're collecting as a participant is valued and used in real time. And so here's just a sampling of some of the sightings and reports across the United States. And you can see that most fireflies are from the eastern seaboard, and there's very little out in the west, although some down in Texas that are native to Texas. And so what we'd like to do is train a little here. And so this is what you're going to be asked to do if you join Firefly Watch. And so we'll run through 3 quick scenarios. And so what we'll do is when you collect, we're asking you to collect 3 counts within 10 seconds, within 10 minutes. So that's all you need to do once a week as a minimum, is to go out, find fireflies and take a 10-minute survey using 3 samples and noting 3 samples. And so here we go. We're going to we're going to time you and run some flash patterns here and see, and then we'll put up the flash chart and see if you can identify what's going on here. You'll see that the flash chart has, you can see that column there. It'll be joined by the flash chart in just a minute. There's the species name, but we've numbered it so it can be faster for you. And Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind, if when we do this, if people want to put their answer in the chat using the corresponding number to the species, it'll be fun to see how people do. Don't be intimidated. This is actually gets pretty simple as you learn. So here we go. This will be the first one. Okay, I'm going to put up the flash chart, and this is a more simplified chart than the one Don showed you earlier. Yeah, that chart that he showed you is more inclusive of the number of species, and that is found in our Firefly Watch website. It's a little buried, but if you look for the tools, you'll find it.
All right, does someone have a guess on what that flashing pattern was?
We'll show you, and maybe you'll jump on the next one.
Well, we've got someone, Roxanne says Photinus consanguine. I don't know how to pronounce that. Say number 5.
Yeah, that's why I gave him numbers. Oops.
Perfect.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. There you go. All right, nice job. Here's our next one. And the flash chart.
All right, Jenna says number 3 immediately.
Awesome, Jenna. You'd make a great.
Is that one really? Does it flash green like that?
It is a little green.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, you're not likely to find. This is a tease. Sorry, you're not likely to find this firefly this far north. But if you were in the southern states, you'd see it for sure.
I've seen him in New Jersey, so from there south.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, Don. And then
can I ask a question?
Sure.
So that flash pattern seemed to go on longer than just, I understand like how the pattern shows in just 0 second, but to me, it seemed to go on from like 0 to maybe 3. And then a few seconds it didn't, and then it went on for another few seconds. So how the pattern is drawn in this chart seems a little bit misleading.
I hear you, and I will take that as a reason to readjust the timing on that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
In real life, that J flash pattern is very quick.
Yeah.
So it's not a second long. It's maybe a quarter of a second.
There you go.
Doug Whitney asks, can you explain why the pattern matches number 3? And I think it's the fact that it's sort of drawing a J with the light and it's happening very quickly, but it's a trace rather than just a flash. Is that
right? Yeah, exactly, and that's what you see. It is more of a trace than a flash.
Well, remember, there are some fireflies that will flash a straight line for up to a couple of seconds. So that would be a flat trace instead of a flash too. So not all fireflies just give a quick blink.
Right. Okay, so are we ready for the last one? But thanks for that feedback. We'll act on it. Here we go. And the flash pattern.
Whitney says number 2 for that one. Lots of number 2s coming in.
All right. Excellent. Yes. So that's wonderful. You've just proven that although it can seem intimidating with all the different flash patterns and species, if you front load things, once you learn a few of the flash patterns, especially the ones that are more likely going to be in your area, then with just a little practice, you can get pretty accurate with it. And so the kind of the agenda there was to get people to think, oh, okay, this isn't that difficult. And so this is the form you would fill out, pretty straightforward. You know, just like so many recordings in citizen science, there's some additional information that you need to take note of, and that's the temperature and the weather and the wind, and then the any sort of light that might be present or not. And so it's pretty straightforward to fill this out. And then again, these are the folks that are using this information, and more than this as well. But yeah, they are constantly looking at entries. So I'd love to have you join, or at least just look at our website and check it out if you want. So massaudubon.org/Firefly Watch is a place you can go. It has quite a lot of information. And again, some of it's a little buried, but there's one particular resource that is like a conglomeration of resources for people interested in fireflies. And there you'll find Dawn's more complex flash chart, as well as other links to resources.
And can I also mention the 2 books, Firefly books that I forgot to mention earlier, if I may. Up until 2016, there weren't any adult books on fireflies, so it was very hard to learn about them. And then in 2016, a researcher named Dr. Sarah Lewis at Tufts University in Medford, Massachusetts, came out with a beautiful book called Silent Sparks, The Wondrous World of Fireflies. And it's beautifully written, easy to understand, and it's all about the biology, natural history of fireflies. So I highly recommend that if you're interested in learning more. A year and a half after that, a second book came out, authored by another firefly researcher, Lynn Faust in Tennessee. And her book is called Fireflies, Glowworms, and Lightning Bugs. And this is more of a field guide. It has a little information on all the fireflies that you're likely to encounter. So those 2 books together would make a great resource for learning more about fireflies.
That's terrific and so fascinating. Thank you both so much. I've got just a couple quick questions if you have a second.
Sure.
So one of them had to do with the time of summer when you'd be most likely to see the highest numbers of fireflies. Is there a month that is the prime month for?
Yes, so what we found in Firefly Watch, the records that we had from here in New England, late May, June, July, and early August, or was about where you'd find them here. Down south, it's a lot longer season. And in some cases in Florida, we found people finding them all year round, including in the middle of winter. So I would say the best time would be June, 2nd week, 3rd, 4th week of June, early July. And then on the other ends of those, some years you'll see them in May and early June, some years you won't, and so forth. But in that middle time period, end of June, beginning of July, I would say would be the best time.
Terrific. And then,
Don, is it true that it's better if it's the humidity level's pretty high?
I don't think so,
No?
because I don't know how much that would affect the adult fireflies. And I didn't see any research, anything that indicated that the humidity had much of a difference. Of course, we weren't measuring the humidity, just whether it was raining or not. And certainly on the days it wasn't raining and the days it was raining, even pouring, fireflies could be out.
Mhm.
But I don't know of any research that shows that humidity has any effect on them. It doesn't mean it doesn't, it's just that we don't know that yet.
there was another question about whether temperature has an effect. I'm assuming it has an effect on the flashing speed, but does it affect how many you'd see?
Yes, much below 50 degrees or below 50 degrees, they're not going to be out flying. So you want to go out on a night when it's above that. And of course, the warmer it is, the more it's going to be active, and they'll be more active, each firefly too.
Great. One final question. Roxanne asks, are there fireflies in Hawaii?
Are there fireflies what?
In Hawaii.
I don't know. We never had any volunteers from Hawaii. And if they had them, I would assume they would not be the flashing fireflies, since they didn't seem to get past the Rocky Mountains. So if you were in like the West Coast, you would never see fireflies flash. They have the daytime fireflies, not many people know about them. But that's an interesting question. I'm going to have to see if I can find an answer to that.
Great. And then Elizabeth just asked, is there an effect of altitude above sea level? I'm assuming that would change species potentially, but.
It could change species, and there are some fireflies. One of the genera of fireflies that flashes, I didn't mention because it's only found in Arizona in the mountains. So yes, the species would be different, but they could be found up in the mountains as long as it's not too cold.
Terrific. Well, Don and Doug, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. That was great, incredibly informative and fun to hear about. Have a great evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks. And I just checked. There unfortunately no fireflies in Hawaii.
Amazing. On the spot answers. That's great. All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Enjoy firefly season. Have fun.
We all will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.